Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. If Aunt Gertie were here, she said, Joey, this must be a mistake. The part of the story that I didn't have the nerve to tell back in '86, I guess it was, about my Aunt Gertie, was the first time that I heard anyone say, now, Joey, your father's not a bad man. It never crossed my mind that my father was a bad man. And then she'd go on to say, I swear to God it's true, she'd say, it's not his fault he's English, Joey. It's not his fault he's English. My niece and my goddaughter, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden Owens, is here. Where are you? Where are you, Missy? Stand up, baby. Mr. Kehoe, I want you to know she represents Coca-Cola in New York. I just want you to know that. So take damn good care of her, or Aunt Gertie will be back. I thank you for this honor. You talk about striving. My mom used to have an expression. She'd say, as long as you're alive, you have an obligation to strive, and you're not dead till you've seen the eyes of God. And the truth of the matter is, I think that's the Irish of it. I think that's the Irish of it. Most of all of you in this room, I've learned today, but I already knew, are of Irish heritage. Most of all of you are descendants from those immigrants who arrived between 1840 and 1900. Most, if not all of you, have heard your grandfather, your great-grandfather, great-aunt, or uncle tell stories, which on reflection, you're not at all sure they're true, about your family, about your Irish roots. I'm sure that many of you, you mentioned my grandfather Finnegan, and he was a student of Irish history. He approved of the fact that I thought that one of the most noble figures in history was Wolfe Tone, even though he was a Protestant. I want you to know, Congressman, in the neighborhood I come from, there's no such thing as Welsh Irish or Scotch Irish. My grandmother Finnegan, we used to come back to 10:30 Mass at St. Paul's, and everyone would sit around. The women literally would go in the dining room in the neighborhood and sit around the lace tablecloth and have tea, and the men would sit around the big kitchen table of my grandpa Finnegan, and they'd argue sports and politics. And when you got to be about 13 or 14, if you were a boy, you could wander around the table. You didn't sit. And I was standing behind my grandpa, holding on, who was a man of great rectitude, and they were arguing about whether the next-door neighbor, Johnny Colligan, was going to switch Congressman and become a Republican, because Packy Cummings, the county chairman, and the city chairman would not let him run for mayor. And my grandmother walked up and said, Ambrose, he's not switching. And my grandfather looked at my grandmother dismissively and said, Geraldine, how in the hell would you know? And she looked back, she said, I saw him take communion this morning. And that's a true story. That's a true story. So I just want, and my grandfather, who was a student, I know this will come as a shock to you, but I'm occasionally rambunctious and viewed as sometimes passionate when I was a young man, not anymore. And my grandfather used to always talk about Irish history, Joey. He said, when you grow up, you worry me. He said, if you have a choice of being De La Vera or be Collins, be De La Vera. And my grandmother said, no, Joey, be Collins. But I don't know how many of you were told the kind of things I was told about my great-grandfather and my great-uncle, who everything from the black and tan, so they fought in the IRA. They weren't even in Ireland, and they fought in the IRA. My great-grandfather Blewett, who came, and the Blewetts came earlier than the Finnegans from Mayo, and graduated. He was the class of '79 of Lafayette University, and was a mining engineer. When he ran for the state senate in Pennsylvania, and I'm told, haven't been able to verify this, part of the legend, the first Irish Catholic senator in the state of Pennsylvania, 1904, that these newspaper articles my Uncle Ed left me, accusing him of being a Molly Maguire. If you know the Molly Maguires. He denied it. We all hoped it had been true. But, you know, all the legends you hear. A matter of fact, as some of the presser will tell you, last time I ran for president, I figured I better look at my genealogy because, hell, I'm going to be killed saying something that's not true. And Megan, thank you for straightening out everything for me. Voluntarily, I've spoken to you on the phone. I haven't been able to meet you personally. I hope before I leave we'll get a chance to say hello. But all the stories, all the pride, all that of which created this sense of unity among Irish Americans. It's an interesting story. It's interesting when you think about it. Why are we as proud as we are? Why, Father, and by the way, Father, I need anticipatory absolution today before I begin this. I appreciate it. But, why would my mother say things to me like, and coming from very modest means, Joey, remember, you're a Biden. Like, what the hell's a Biden? But it was, no, I'm serious. My mother, that was it, You're every man's equal. No man is better than you. It was like, we were talking about some dynasty, but it was real. It was real. It was palpable. It was, you could taste it. You could feel it. And I often wondered as I've grown up, this sense of pride that we have. It is so strong. I realize it permeates other ethnic American groups as well. I married Dominic Giacoppa's daughter, so I know it. But there's something about us Irish. There's something about us Irish, about how we view ourselves and how we were viewed by others. I think we are at once, at the same time, dreamers and yet realists. We have a combination of spirituality, yet we're doubters. We're compassionate, yes, we're really demanding. From the time I can remember, as I said, I remember my mother saying, I used to stutter when I was a kid, my mother saying, Joey, nobody is better than you. Everyone's your equal, but no one's better than you. Treat everyone with respect, but demand respect. Demand respect from everyone with whom you deal. Never bow. I remember I was going to meet the Queen of England, Jean, as a young senator. And as I was heading to the airport, I'd give you my word, before I left the house, I got a call from my mother. I said, swear to God, Joey, be polite, but do not kiss her ring. Swear to God. I got the great honor of introducing my mother to Pope John Paul. My mother said, Joey, don't kiss his ring. There was this thing about never bending. Never bending. As my dad would say, it's all about dignity. All about dignity. Everyone is entitled to be treated with dignity. No man, under any circumstance, has a right to treat someone in a way that doesn't acknowledge their dignity. And in the end, I think it really is about faith and family and country. I choose to believe that it was true that from the arrival of the first famine ships like the Dunbrody, which set sail in 1845, to the ship the Finnegans sailed on, is the Mentioner's Butte, which arrived in 1850. To the thousands of Irish immigrants that enter our country today, 50,000 of whom have not yet reached safe harbor. They're here, they're Americans, but they're not citizens. They're undocumented. We have to find a fair and effective and a decent way to bring them out of the shadows. Along with 11 million other undocumented immigrants from all across the country. the vast majority of whom are Hispanic, many Asian as well, so they can earn a pathway to citizenship. As the great Irish poet Bono said, he's an interesting guy, by the way. He said, America is not just a country, it's an idea. It's an idea that's been embraced by the Irish for the past 2 centuries. And because of that embrace, the idea of America has borne great fruit, not only for us, but quite frankly, for the whole world. And what we all know is that there's a never-ending need to continue to nurture that idea of America as a place that's all about possibilities. As a United States Senator, Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Vice President for the last, I hate to say, 40 years, I've literally met every major head of state, I believe, in that span of history. I've traveled almost 700,000 miles as Vice President. And it never ceases to amaze me that when others talk about us abroad, what is buried in the translation is that America is about possibilities. It's all about possibilities. Possibilities for those who are willing to work hard, those who are willing to play by the rules. The history of the journey of this country, in my view, has been the promise that anything is possible. I know it sounds trite to say it, but that anything is possible. I think that's what it's attractive. Wave of immigration after wave. All those immigrants who are constantly infused this country with new blood, new ideas, a new sense of determination, a new certainty of continued possibilities. It's why I think we're such a great nation. I really mean that. I've said this for the last 30 years. This is not because I'm being honored here today. And I think it's the distinguishing feature that sets America apart from all other nations. All other nations. That's the distinguishing feature. But today, our immigration system is broken. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be fair. It needs to continue to hold out the promise of possibilities. And that means we have to modernize the existing legal system to deal with the reality that 11 million plus people are undocumented. Today, our legal immigration system, though well-intended, has the effect of keeping families separated. America is about family. We Irish are about family. My grandfather, when he came a year ahead of his family, would not have stayed were it not able to bring his family, and I mean his whole family, with him. Because that's about what happened. What did we do when we got here? We built communities. We weren't a polyglot of individuals. We were about family, about neighborhood, about community. That's who the hell we are. But today, most people don't realize today a naturalized American has to wait a minimum of 12 years, for the opportunity to bring his brother or his sister to join him. That's a system that needs to be changed and can be changed. As I said, when my great-grandfather came in 49, or my great-great-grandfather before that on the Blewett side came earlier. They came looking for those possibilities, not just for them, but for their families. You know, the fact is that we have an easy way to fix this. You know, when we brag about our ancestors, we always brag about the same way. We brag about the interconnectivity of the family. We brag about the determination. We feel pride in their sense of their faith. We feel pride in the fact that they withstood the slings and arrows of prejudice. Well, we have to fix the system to focus on families. And this can be done. We can keep families together by raising the country caps for the family-sponsored immigration system. With this change and by adding an extra visas to the system, we believe we can eliminate the backlog in the family-sponsored immigration system so families can reunite quickly. That's what we should do. That's how communities are built. As I said, that's how families are built. Every year, our existing system, on another score, sends home 40,000 PhDs and masters in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We send them, we educate them at the greatest universities in the world, and then we send them home. Why do we do that? We are spending, the President and I are working as hard as we can on STEM education, trying to get 100,000 STEM education teachers who teach science, math, technology. Why do we deny 40,000 a year with PhDs who want to stay? Why do we not deny them a visa? Every one of those kids, as they cross this stage and they're at the university this May or June, should have a green card stamped to their diploma. It's in the interest of the United States of America. If they find a job here, they should be able to stay here and help us build and compete and be on the cutting edge as we always have been, the new technologies driven by science and mathematics. Who knows if that PhD neuroscientist we sent back last year to their home country might be the person or the man or woman who holds the key to curing Alzheimer's. As all of you know, there are already 11 million undocumented Hispanics, Irish, and Asians, mostly Hispanics, in this country, many of whom have been here for more than a generation, many of whom arrived with their parents when they were children or barely, just literally months old. All of them are living in the shadows, yet most of them are working and paying taxes and being productive. What a waste of opportunity. Over 50,000 of them are Irish. They're already Americans. They're just not citizens yet. We have to fix the system. The Taoiseach was at my home yesterday morning, and we were sitting in the library before the breakfast, and he said, "Mr. Vice President, imagine," this was his quote, "imagine not being able to go home for your mother's funeral, for you know you'll never be able to come back." It's not just the Irish. That's a circumstance, not only for Irish undocumented, for Latinos, Asians, and others. You know, we need to protect and secure our border. Every country has a right to secure its borders, and we are doing that. There is less legal immigration crossing the border today than any time in recent history. But there needs to be an earned pathway to citizenship. It's in America's naked self-interest. Now, we said that anyone currently here legally must pass a national security and criminal background check, pay their back taxes, pay a penalty, and go to the back of line behind those who are waiting outside the country. But they deserve a path. They deserve the certain knowledge that they do this. It may take 10 or 12 years, but they're out of the shadows. They're here in a pathway. And for those children brought here illegally through no fault of their own, the so-called dreamers, if they go to college, if they join the military, we believe they should have an expedited path to citizenship. Because I said they're already Americans. They know nothing else. Where do we send them back to? But we shouldn't be surprised that this idea has been met with very stiff resistance. That's always the case. It's been the case in every new wave of immigration in the United States. Most people think the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, started because of African Americans. It was an anti-immigration movement as well. There were too many of us Catholics coming. It wasn't just about blacks. In the late 1800s, this sentiment generated an entire political movement known as the Know Nothing Party. Xenophobia is not unique to the 19th and 20th centuries. We Irish faced it, and most of you understand it. If some of you yourself have felt it, but all of you heard it from your grandmother and grandfather and others. Prejudice makes little distinction between educated and uneducated, between the prosperous and the poor. As has been noted by now, my grandfather Finnegan was a blind musician who ended up in Ovid, New York, going to Scranton, Pennsylvania. But my grandfather Blewett was college educated, a mining engineer in 1879, laid out the sewer system in Mexico, as well as in Scranton, Pennsylvania, his hometown. But there was no distinction between my educated uncle, Edward Francis Blewett, and my uneducated great-great-grandfather, and my uneducated great-grandfather, a blind musician. They were Irish, and they were Catholic, and we had enough of them. So they were ostracized. Our ancestors were victims of stereotypical characteristics of the Irish at the time. What were we? We were Catholics with all those kids. We bred like rabbits. We were drunkards. In 1892, the New York Times wrote of our ancestors the following: "It is next to impossible to penetrate this mass of protected, secluded humanity with modern ideas. Where they halt, they stay, and where they stay, they multiply and cover the earth." That was a quote. As my grandfather Finnegan would say, that editor is rolling over in his grave today knowing I'm sitting the most popular columnist with the New York Times, Maureen Dowd. He is rolling over in his grave at this point. What sweet irony. I want you to write an article about those editors, which only you can do satirically. If you allow me to digress for a moment, in 2008, running for Vice President of the United States, campaigning with the President, I went out to Pueblo, Colorado, to campaign. There was a crowd of thousands, estimated 10,000 people, waiting for me to come out and speak. I was in the Pueblo Union Depot, which was a historic train station, purchased by a wealthy family and restored to its original luster. It was active until the early 1900s and was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. I did that rally, as I said, and folks, I was inside the waiting room about to walk out on the platform to speak across the tracks to this large assembled crowd. I was standing with an American senator whose family had been here over 400 years, a Hispanic, a guy named Senator Salazar, who went on to be the Secretary of Interior. He was telling me about the movement that was occurring in Colorado and why he believed we were going to win that red state. It was changing because of Hispanic registration and the Hispanic vote, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, "Joe, we've got to do something about this immigration thing. You don't understand how we are being treated, et cetera." And literally in this restored station, I looked on the walls, and in every wall there was a big plaque, a brass plaque, probably a little over 1 foot by 6 inches, and it had 2 words on it. Literally. It said, "No Irish." And I joked to Ken, I said, "Ken, tell me about it." And I pointed. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that something you already know, that this prejudice hung on us for a long, long time, and some places still hangs a little bit. And I'll bet some of you, even of your generation, even the men and women who've been inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I find it, I'm flattered, but I haven't done what you have done. You're extremely successful men and women, but I'll bet you still occasionally feel, the bite once in a while. It's in that look or that pronunciation of your last name or some joke about Catholicism. So the point is, we should know a hell of a lot better, we Irish, particularly you successful Irish. We have an obligation. Every one of us in this room have an obligation. We've made it. And why? Because we stood upon the shoulders of those who came before us. We stood upon those proud shoulders of our grandparents and grandmothers and grandfathers who wouldn't bend, who came with nothing for a hell of a long time, were unable to achieve much of anything, except maintain their pride and their dignity. They were proud, they stood tall. It's time for us to stand up, not just for those 50,000 Irish in the shadows today, but for the 11 million Hispanics, who, by the way, are just as proud, just as noble, care just as much about their families as we did. Because like our forebears, they possess overwhelming potential to build this great country of ours. Today, we're facing one of those existential moments when we have to ask ourselves, what do we stand for? What do we believe? What kind of nation are we? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of nation are we going to become? And the decision we make won't just have enormous impact on our economic future. It will once again test our commitment to the fundamental beliefs that set us apart. That American idea. America is an idea. 17% of the students on our college campuses today are Hispanic. 25% of all the students in K through 12 are Hispanic children. 11% of our military, who I've visited over 25 times in Iraq and Afghanistan, 11% of them are men and women serve with exceptional valor, are Hispanic. Many of them not citizens. I had the great privilege with my wife Jill three 4th of Julys ago to induct in one of Afwa Palace, one of the god-awful gaudy palaces of Saddam Hussein. I thought it was a beautiful irony to induct 190 American soldiers, not one of whom was a citizen, a significant number of whom had received the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, to stand there and swear them in as American citizens. That's what the hell makes us different. Now's the time. We need to pass comprehensive immigration reform. My friends in Congress are always kid me because I'm always quoting Irish poets. Everybody thinks it's because I have some scholarly bent. It's not. I used to stutter so badly, and my uncle Ed, who was a well-educated man and lived with us as a bachelor, had 2 volumes of Yeats on the bureau, and at night in the bedroom we had, which was normal, 2 bunk beds, my 2 brothers and I and my uncle, and I'd put this little light onto the lamp and stand in front of the mirror and read Yeats, because you have to learn when you stutter. It's really kind of debilitating. You kind of and you contort your face, and I'd practice and practice and practice not to contort my face, just to try to breathe and get it down. And so, by the way, Yeats's poem, Easter Sunday, 1916, is truer today than it was then when he said, all's changed, changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. That describes America and the world today better than it did even as Ireland in those days. But my colleagues always kid me because I find myself having just, out of rote, learned so much Irish poetry. One of my favorite contemporary poet is Seamus Heaney. And in his poem, The Cure at Troy, he wrote, history says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history rhyme. There are over 11 million people out there, good people, who are waiting for hope and history to rhyme. And I think we, above all other people, who felt that brunt of prejudice, the disregard of our talent, the marginalization of our religion, the characterization of our families, I think we have both the capacity and the obligation, not just to take those 50,000 Irishmen out of the shadows, but everyone out of the shadows. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a rare privilege and a great honor, and I mean that sincerely. I would have never dreamed that I would be in this position. Oh, I wasn't surprised that I'd be vice president, but I am surprised. I am surprised I'm in the Irish Hall of Fame. Thank you all very, very much.